I think South Africa has got so much wrong with it, but there's so much to fix. There's so much opportunity.
We've got a legend in the entrepreneurial space.
I completely resonate with the entrepreneurial spirit. I feel I'm in my tribe.
A business incubation pioneer in Africa.
It's not just about creativity, it is what the opportunity that present by being there.
Globally recognized entrepreneur and educator.
It's not as if big companies are idiots and the small guys are clever.
Raizcorp has covered 17,000 businesses in its incubation program.
Sometimes opportunities are not obvious. They're obvious to a few.
Previous entrepreneur in residence at Oxford University's Saïd Business School.
But he then, his next sentence was the most powerful sentence.
And the host of the Big Small Business Show.
And that sentence changed my whole relationship with code.
Allon Raiz, it's an absolute pleasure having you here today. Hey, welcome to the latest episode of the C.Cast. It's an absolute pleasure having you here today. Before we get into the next guest, I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what this podcast is about. We are about connecting creativity and technology to uplift the African continent and connect the world to Africa. What we do is we chat to members of our communities. We give them a platform to share their story and to share how they are connecting Africa to the digital economy and the world to Africa. So before we get into this next guest, if you like our content, I just want to remind you to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment down below about what you think about the conversation. If you want to get more involved in the community, you can also join the WhatsApp group by scanning the QR code. In this group, we'll be able to share opportunities, knowledge with you, and you'll be able to meet other like-minded people of the community. So yeah, we hope to see you in the group soon. Until then, let's get into the episode. Before we actually sat down and, started talking, I had a conversation with a gentleman named Katlego, and he was telling me, we were having a conversation on the roof talking about, just our experiences, business, what's happening in the current landscape in South Africa. And he dropped a name and mentioned Allon Raiz. And I thought, what are the chances? I'm actually going to be speaking to Allon next week. So him and I had a nice conversation where he told me about how he started out at Raizcorp and how that's impacted his journey. He started out there as his first job, and now he's currently working at IBM. And the one thing that he mentioned was the idea, or the first thing that he experienced at Raizcorp was a program about discovering who am I. And what I'm really excited about today is to find out who is Allon, because there has been a huge impact that you have left. There's been a big footprint that has come from the work that you've done. But as you speak about in many of the things that you've put out there in the world through the education that you are sharing with many people, is the idea of a surname and how there is generational incubation that happens from generation to generation. So looking at someone like Allon sitting here today who's left this big footprint, where does Allon come from?
Yeah, so I hope I haven't left it. I hope I'm still leaving it because I've still got lots of work to do. But thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it. I come from, to be called a legend in your introduction is a little, it feels like who you're talking about, because I don't honestly feel that way. But the true legend was my mentor, who has had more impact in the world than I have by, a million miles. And I was lucky enough in my 20s to be discovered by him in a quite an arbitrary way. And then he's been my mentor for 30 years.
Sure.
And so I come from somebody who believed in me when I was in my 20s, somebody who believed in me after I failed first time, invested in a business with me. I failed. He reinvested in me, and he remains my mentor today, still for 30 years. So that's where I come from, as in terms of what Raizcorp is a paid forward for what happened to me. I was given a second chance. I had somebody to believe in me, and that's what essentially at the essence of Raizcorp. That's what we do. We find entrepreneurs who have what we call blue heart, that ability to stand up again and again and again and again and again, and then we believe in them, and we provide them with incredible resources and input, and to your point earlier, to self-knowledge as well, which is an incredibly important part of success. And we back them, and we do that in all sorts of different contexts. We do that in deep rural contexts, deep rural contexts on the continent. We do that with businesses in the billions of rands. We do that with startup businesses, tech businesses. We do it across everything. So we're very exposed to that entrepreneurial spirit. And then, having done this for 24 years so far, eventually it gets generational. And all of a sudden you're seeing the people that were 20 years ago in your incubation program becoming hugely successful, and then paying it forward, and then sending people through to Raizcorp, and it's just got a sort of a momentum, and it's quite humbling, because the other day I went to do a pitch at one of the large corporates, and I was sitting waiting in the reception, and this lady walked up to me and she said to me, I just want to say to you that I'm here because of you. And she must have been 20-something years old. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, my mom was in Raizcorp, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And because of, what happened in Raizcorp, she put me through private school. And, I'm here today as a result. So you see it all over,
Yeah. So, and like I always like to refer to it as a butterfly effect, right? Because when you impact one person, it's not just that person that you're impacting. It's what does that impact translate into the lives of the people around them.
Yeah.
Going back to your mentor who discovered you 30 years ago, what is it that you think he discovered in you? And where do you think that came from?
It's a complex answer. And to be honest, in the beginning, I was quite perplexed by his choice, and went to him and asked him. And then he asked me the question, well, who else that you know would be better to invest in? And I think a bit of jealousy said, no, it's fine. I'll be fine. But I think the real reason was that I have father issues, or had father issues, and father issues are a very, very good indicator of entrepreneurial success, which I subsequently researched and understood. He had father issues.
Sure.
And he invested in a lot of young, particularly men, but not necessarily men, but particularly men who had father issues. And when there are father issues, there's a deep desire to prove. And that's, when you're on your knees and you are down and out, that drive is strong. So it's a wonderful indicator of success. And as I today invest in businesses, I've invested in more than 20 businesses as an equity shareholder in those businesses. The predominant number of those entrepreneurs have father issues too. And so if you've got father issues, I say you just come to the front of the queue. I don't ask you anything. Is you go, what's your relationship with your father like? Not so good. I just come to the front of the queue. Yeah.
Like, as you were talking about that, I was laughing because I wonder, does it still count for people that don't have fathers too?
Sure. Yeah. It's father issues. It's very interesting. The research shows that there's two psychologists, Collins and Moore, that show if you've got father issues, if your father was absent either physically or emotionally to you, so physically dead, divorced, or that kind of distance, and you've got an overdoting mother, in combination, it's the most powerful predictor of successful entrepreneurs. The mother is the believer in you, okay, and the father is the reason why you want to prove, okay. And those two, that combination psychologically is incredibly powerful as a driver, as a driving force. And if you think about your question around Raizcorp and what we do, is we act as mother in a sense, right? Because we believe in her. So we are come in that way to fill that gap of somebody to believe in you.
Sure. That's phenomenal. Like, I feel like as I'm speaking to you, I'm viewing my journey in a different light, because when I look at my path, my dad passed away when I was 12. And a lot of the time when I tell someone that, the first response that they give me is, I'm sorry to hear that. And my response to that is always, don't be sorry. Because as crazy as it sounds, him passing away was actually one of the biggest gifts that I've gotten in my life. Because when I look at my journey and all of the challenges that I've gone through, none of them compare to that thing of losing my father. And overcoming that, being able to overcome that, has given me the confidence and the ability to take on these challenges and have confidence in my ability to do that. And I think there's a very powerful message there, because it says that the things that people or society deems to be the thing that is your hindrance can actually be flipped on its head and be the thing that makes you different or gives you the tools that you need to succeed.
Yeah.
And when I think of that in the context of South Africa, I think of it as though South Africa is the fatherless nation, right? Like, if you look at the stats, most or a lot of children in South Africa don't grow up with fathers. And when I look at that, I think, how much potential do we have? But I think in order to realize that potential, there has to be a bit of a mindset shift. So going back to your story and your journey in terms of, growing up with father issues, how did that mind shift happen with you in order for you to be motivated to start a business and build what you've built today?
Sure. So what's interesting about knowing about this is that you can't, even if you know it's irreversible. It's so deep from a psyche perspective that it's irreversible. You can't take away that drive. And I remember, for many, many years, nearly 2 decades of a particularly bad relationship, that there was a point of trying to reconcile. And the biggest hindrance actually was myself to reconciling, because I was so worried that if I reconciled, I'd lose my drive. I so identified with what I'll show you that I was worried, well, if there was a whole family again, that would go away. And I did reconcile eventually after 17 years. And I've got a great relationship today. And the drive is actually stronger, which is quite, I'm in my late 50s, and I feel more driven now than ever before, more urgent and more driven than ever before. But I can't, in speaking to psychologists around this, that 17 years of this innate in you it doesn't evaporate. It's inbred. And maybe a big part of what a big part of that problem was me, because I was a part of that problem. In retrospect, I'm in my 50s now and a father, and I've got a very different perspective today than I did in my 20s. Yeah.
Sure. So was there like a situation that kind of triggered that inward introspection at all? Because I think a lot of the time we tend to focus outwards, and it's easy to do that, like especially in the context of South Africa, where like I always think about this concept of inequality and how like very poor, like right now we're in Sandton, the richest square mile in Africa, and if you go 10 minutes down the road, you're going to find Alex. There's a huge contrast between the haves and the have-nots. When you have that contrast so close in proximity with one another, it's very easy to look outwards and look at, oh, that person has and I don't have, or I have and that person doesn't have. I think what we struggle with a lot, and I think it's even more amplified for younger people, because we have social media, which also brings everything so much closer together and makes things way more contrasty. That thing of like looking outwards versus looking in, what kind of triggered that for you? How did you shift that mindset to look inwards?
I think the first thing is, when you're young, you're or I was quite angry, and openly I was in a blame environment, which is, look at me, poor me, right? Look what I've lost. With strong mentorship, which I had, and I had I'm going to say a brutal mentor. I have a brutal mentor, and not brutal as in a horrible mentor, brutal as in brutal truth. Who kept ensuring that I owned my shit, right? And I'll give you an example of that. So imagine the two of us, you the mentee, I'm the mentor, and we're sitting having a conversation, and I've just invested in you, and the business is going okay, but not so okay, but part of you wants to show how good you are, and that was me. And I was sitting in front of him, and I was speaking about everything that was going on, and he kept looking at his watch. And after the third time of looking at his watch, I said to him, like, do you need to go somewhere? So he goes, no. So I carried on speaking, and he looked at his watch. So I said, you sure you don't need to go anywhere? So he goes, no. So I said, why do you keep looking at your watch? And he said, no, we've got an hour together. You spent the last half hour telling me how great you are. Okay. Are you going to spend the next half hour telling me how great you are? Or are you going to tell me how I can help you? Chat. So that's like a punch in the stomach, like that kind of like in your face, like reflection is, I got very young and in a very, very direct way. Another example was I sold the original business. I got into another business. I 10x that business in a year. Sure. But we ran out of cash. So I went to him and I said, can you please help me second your clever finance guy to come to work in the business, because we've got no cash. So I said, so aren't you a director? So I said, yes. So I said, I'm the marketing director. So I said, well, then change your title and do it yourself. Sure. So I was coming for a pat on the back, and his whole thing was, own it. Go into it, go fix it yourself. Don't look outward for that. So a big part of the answer is great mentorship, brutal but great, important mentorship. And as a mentor today, I'm equally brutal. And the second thing I think was, I'm married to a psychologist. So I think that that's counted well for a life. But I've always been deeply self-reflective, and but in the beginning, when things are going bad, you want to go and look for the answer outside, and eventually you work out that it's never outside, it's inside.
It's so wild that you say that, because so when I finished school, my mom got remarried, and I went from having no dad to having a stepdad who's also an entrepreneur. And I remember when I had graduated from school, I went from, following the traditional path, go corporate job, blah, 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 and decided, and I'm not going to go the corporate route. I feel like it's predictable. I can see where I will head at and what I need to do to get there. I want to do something that's going to stretch me, that I don't know how it's going to pan out, because that tells me that I'm going to grow, because I don't know what to do or how to climb. So I decided to go that route. And because my mom had just got remarried, I was thinking to myself, this is great. Like, I've got a mentor to go to who is also in business, who I can get all the advice that I need from. Like, it's going to be good. And I remember going there, and every time I'd go there with the things I was struggling with, they would be like, just go get a job. Like, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? And I think that kind of taught me a little bit of that lesson as well, in terms of how you need to like figure it out for yourself. There's no one's going to come and give you the answer. The point is for you to be able to figure it out. And that's not an easy thing. And that's a lonely journey, right? And I think that's, you speak about entrepreneurship and how difficult it is. Being a young person, you see how much it's romanticized, how every celebrity is also an entrepreneur and it looks all amazing, whatever, and you don't realize the nitty gritties of it. But going through it, you know, you have to kind of, when I look at like parents, you kind of have to let your kid fall in order for them to learn, or you kind of have to let them put their finger on the stove to understand that it's hot. And when I look back, I kind of like see how that was their way of like guiding me through that. In the time, I hated it though. I hated it so much. I was like, flip, I'm coming here for support and I'm getting nothing. Like, I'm already like on my own. But I think through that, it kind of like gives you the strength to grow. And I think it comes back to that conversation of like how going through those difficult things is really like the thing that actually equips you with the tools that you need to get where you want to go. So having said that, on your journey, what would you say has been like the biggest failure that you have had on your journey that kind of gave you the lessons that you needed to carry out what you're busy with today?
Sure. I guarantee you, I've had way more failures than you, way more failures, and will continue to do so. I'm trying to think as you speak about the ones that stand out for me. Bad partnerships, not being my biggest personal failure was not being aggressive enough, young enough. And that was a confidence issue, I think. Retrospectively, I would say, why didn't I just go harder at the time when it was all, when it was good?
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Why didn't you go harder?
Because of the scripts that was in my head at the time, that there was a level of self-belief that was lacking at the time. I mean, I always felt I was going to be successful no matter what. But, we speak about it a lot, that imposter syndrome, because, as you grow a business, I've got a relatively large business today, but when you're a one-man band, it's the biggest business you've run.
Yeah.
When you're a two-man business, it's the biggest business you've run. When you're a 10-man band, it's the biggest business you've run. When you're 50 and 100 and 200 and so on, it's the biggest business you've run. And so there's no book on how to run a 201 person operation, or if you're 10 people to 15, there's no book on that. And so in that, when you're going through, I remember when we were 8 people big and we had AFSA coming to visit us, I phoned every one of my friends and said, just come to the office and bring your laptops and look busy, because I needed to show that there were lots of people there, and, and I'd walk past and as if they were all employees, because you want to act bigger than you are. And so you feel that when you're 8, that if like a business that's 30 people is huge. And so when you're running a 30-person operation, you think, well, I actually don't know how to run this thing. This is like for big people. And then you eventually work it out through a lot of mistakes. And then you're a 35-person operation. You go, sure, that's a lot harder. And then when you get to 50, that's another like milestone. You go, I've never run it like, it's a 50 people big, and then it's 100, and so on. And so you always feel like you're an imposter because you've never run a business that way. And so your journey is just to work out how to close that gap the whole time and build confidence. And so for me, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not saying this is the context for all entrepreneurs. You asked the question, why didn't I go aggressive? It's because, first of all, I was just trying to understand how to be that big and close the gap on all the mistakes that I kept making. And by the time I had my head up, some opportunities had passed. Today, I'm a little wiser and I approach it differently. But that's certainly a big part of it was also confidence issue, that how could I double the business. And then in 2008, 2012, we started 3.5xing the business every year for nearly 5 years. So it's 3.5 times its size year on year.
It's exponential.
And then it nearly blew out after that. And so in 2014, there was this massive near collapse in the business. And the biggest lesson, coming back to the biggest lesson, I would say it was that point where I realized I'd been too operational. I was not strategic. I didn't respect process and systems as I should have. And my answer to that in that growth was to go external and find somebody who from a corporate environment who I thought would know how to run a business that size. So I abdicated instead of delegate, and that was a big part of my mistake.
Sure. While you're speaking, I'm thinking of a quote that comes to mind. It's that our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. It is that we are more powerful than what we believe to be. And I think that is a quote that really speaks to your mindset and how you view yourself. And that comes back to that whole like personal development thing. I think one of the things that I'm hearing you say, and that's a repeated thing, is this thing of failing and learning. Like the only way that you can grow is by failing. But I think a lot of people out there are so scared of the failure part because it's painful. So it's like, how do you continually put yourself into that difficult situation over and over and over again? I think for me, it's really like come down to that question of why you're doing what you're doing. So coming back to your work and putting yourself, I mean, you said now, like even now, you're still chasing that failure because every time you learn and you grow into something new, what is the why that kind of propels that for you?
I think there are two whys. I'll talk about a deep-seated pay it forward. That's because of my journey, the power of being believed in. So I completely resonate with the entrepreneurial spirit. When I'm amongst entrepreneurs, I feel I'm in my tribe, and their struggles I understand, and especially young entrepreneurs, I identify with them. I've just joined a networking group. This is certainly the oldest person in the group, and you know, when I'm in this group, there's 8 of us in like a forum, and when they speak, half of it I'm yawning because I've been there 20 years ago, but the other half I'm saying, what does that mean? That acronym, just explain what that means, and how does it work? And now I've just gone and started a new journey at 57. I launched a tech startup at the ripe old age of 57. I know nothing about tech. I can barely switch on a computer, and I'm going through a whole journey of learning and failing, and there's and I'm selling, and people are rejecting me, and part of me, and it's like not a big amount, and part of me, the let's call it the arrogant part of me, is going like, can you not see this? Are you stupid? They're like, are you stupid? And the other part of me is, okay, you've got your story going as well. And then I'm going, okay, why aren't they buying? What aren't they seeing? And then I go sit down and I sort of, write, okay, I messed up there, and then I experiment again. And so this constant iteration. So to answer your question, number one is my why is this deep connection with the entrepreneurs, and my why is them, is us. Yeah. And this other part of it is a self-fulfillment part, because people talk about this place. A lot of people, I'm sure, sit in this thing, talk about quite a lofty reason as to why, but it's not about money, but it is about success. It is about I'm successful, about feeling successful, about that feeling, about feeling successful. And even though I know this, the moment you feel successful, it's not soon after that, life gives you a snot flap. And then you don't feel so successful and go, yeah, you thought it was all okay. Well, how about this? Like, how about COVID? Yeah, like, just how about that? And then you're going, oh my gosh, and during COVID, I literally, I locked myself in my office at home. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but with a bottle of whiskey and 3M stickies, the post-it notes, and I just tried to solve it. I said, I'm not leaving this room till I work out how to get out of this. And the room was just filled with just all my thoughts on how to get out of it. And I not only got out of it, it actually was the biggest gift, because we absolutely took off during and after COVID.
Hey, hold on. I just need to remind you very quickly to like, share, and subscribe, and leave a comment down below about what you think about this episode. We need to be able to tell the algorithm on YouTube that we are creating content that is valuable. So please engage with this content, whether you're listening to it on YouTube or on Spotify, or whatever platform, please engage. It just helps us reach more people, brings more people into the community, which means more access to knowledge and opportunities for you, a member of the community. So please don't forget to engage on this video or this audio podcast and leave a like, comment, or subscribe and give it a share. Thank you so much.
And I think a lot of that's down to how you look at the situation, right? Because when COVID came for us as well, I remember before COVID knocking on the doors of cafes and whatever restaurant we could, trying to pitch to them how we create content and how we want to do their social media. And no one wanted to listen to us at all. And then COVID happened, and then they didn't have a choice but to use social media or create content.
Yeah.
And then from then, it's become so much easier to sell. So I think a lot of that just depends on if we looked at COVID and we were like, no, it's the end of the world, it's the end of our business, you're already defeated in your mind.
Yeah.
That whatever's happening, those thoughts that you're thinking will play out into reality.
I remember calling my mentor and saying to him, so what do I do? And he says, how the F should I know? Okay. I said, but in your 70s, usually, he said, I've never seen this before. But he then says, next sentence was the most powerful sentence. He said, but if you see this as your ship coming in, it'll be your ship coming in. If you're looking for a lifeboat, you'll see this as a disaster. See this as your ship coming in, don't look for the lifeboat. Okay. And that sentence changed my whole relationship with COVID. Saying, okay, what is going to happen now? Where are the opportunities as a result? And so in my mind, I looked at it very differently. And big part of what happened in that time was I thought, oh, the competition is going to go into a corner and wait. So I doubled my sales team. I doubled everything. I went aggressive, very aggressive, and ate up market share at that time as a result.
Sure. And then once things had subsided, the playing field was no longer the same, right?
Exactly. It was different.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's that thing of mindset, it's such a powerful thing. It's all internal. So I get why the focus is so much on developing ourselves personally. When it comes to I want to talk a little more about the bigger picture in terms of Raizcorp, right? Because you've obviously come from a background where you've created businesses, you've grown them, and then you moved a little bit more towards into incubating businesses and going to this thing of mindset. When I wasn't alive when apartheid ended, right? I was born in 97, so I'm 3 years after our first election. But I can imagine that at that point in time, a lot of people, especially in our community, were probably thinking this is the end of the world. What is going to happen? And there was probably a lot of uncertainty as well. What kind of conversations or thoughts were happening in your mind at that time when it came to, the end of apartheid, now moving into a new South Africa? Obviously, you saw opportunities there, but I just want to get a little bit more into the story of how that actually unfolded.
So I was relatively young at the time. It's 1994. I was just early as an entrepreneur, and my memory is that it was quite euphoric, actually, in South Africa at the time. There was this euphoria. I mean, there were all the naysayers, but I happened to be in a group that was quite positive.
Oh, wow.
About what was happening and what was going on. So my choice was which river I was going to put my boat in, and I chose, the optimistic one, which was the right one. And so I surrounded myself with those people. A lot of the people that were pessimistic either left the country or fulfilled that pessimistic anticipation in some way. That was I could say for many of those individuals, you're still in my circle or larger circle today. I'd say they're self-fulfilled, the pessimistic view. And it doesn't matter what was presented, it will always be bad. They'd look at the bad. And so to me, if you think about what learning is always about, well, what could I do better? Where's the opportunity to learn? And so no matter what changes, this is what I say to entrepreneurs. In Delta, there's opportunity. Whatever, if there's no Delta, there's no opportunity. Mature markets, there's no Delta, nothing's changing. It's established. The margins have been brought down. There's no real opportunity. It's only when there's disruption, change, something radical happens, that's where opportunity lies. And those things like COVID that we speak about, or a regime change, or those kinds of things are all massive opportunities. And the entrepreneurs are sitting rubbing their hands when it happens, right? But they don't know exactly where the ball's going to fall out to catch, but they're looking for it because they know it's going to come out. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine who left South Africa when at school. I went to America. I was talking to him during COVID, and he had just gone to borrow $2 million. Borrowed, did he? Sure. Yeah. From wherever he could, to put into oil futures. Because I don't know if you remember, but at one point oil had a negative price. I mean, it's an obscure concept that they would pay you to take oil from them. So oil was so low. The price of oil was so low. And his view was, it's never going to be this low. It has to recover. And he made absolute hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of that. Because his lens was, when I was speaking to him, because he was a trader, so he understood that was his domain. So he understood that change was the biggest opportunity of his life. So whenever these things happen, whatever it happens, no matter what side of whatever thing is happening, there's always opportunity.
Now, in the context of South Africa today, would you say that you're one of those entrepreneurs that's rubbing their hands together now, or what's your outlook on the current situation?
I think South Africa has got so much wrong with it, but there's so much to fix. There's so much opportunity. We know all the ills. We know from electricity to water to crime to corruption to we've got a list, a shopping list of opportunities. In a more mature, stable environment, you might have a nice, boring life, but you certainly don't have the opportunities that are presented here. The opportunities are huge here, and I mean, literally, this is not exaggeration. On a daily basis, I'm presented with opportunity daily. My problem is what to choose, not the lack of. It's what to say no to, not what to say yes to. That's the opportunity. Yeah.
How do we solve those? Because having the idea is the easy part, right? It's it's very easy to see an opportunity and think of a potential solution to that problem. But making that solution or transferring that idea that's in your mind into the real world is a very difficult thing to do. I think a lot of it requires creativity, but a lot of it also requires consistency. So how do we, as young people especially, because there's a lot of young people that are very gifted that are leaving the country, understandably so, but then there's also a few that are staying, that can see the opportunity, that want to capitalize on that, myself included. How do we actually make that happen? How do we bridge that gap? And I think, I don't know if, yeah, I'm curious to see if you take more of like a macro kind of answer or micro answer to that question. Because I think there are people out there that are staying, that can see the opportunities, but they're just not too sure like how to take that idea from reality and translate it into, the idea in their mind and then translate it into reality.
I would say, I would definitely say micro, not macro.
Okay.
Yeah, like Raizcorp, you spoke in your introduction about the scale of Raizcorp. Scale of Raizcorp was one business.
Sure.
You know, in the beginning, it was me and one business, and then me and two businesses, and then me and three businesses, and then eventually it was me and somebody else, and with more businesses, and so it then grew. But you know, and maybe that's part of I'm not aggressive enough and don't think big enough. But my view is that prove it in a unitized way, and then multiply the units. And then as you multiply the units of what I call certainly compelling economic right to exist. So if you prove it in a small environment, it works there, right? Then double it. And that's relatively easy, the gap. And then double it again. So you go to 2 to 4. And there's this exponentiality that you play with, and 4 to 8. And then as you're going through that exponential curve, something happens in the negative. There's friction as you go there, because the organization has to reorganize itself at a bigger scale. Now you start to compete in a different environment. You also start to attract competition to you. And so there's a context change as the business scales. And then you go 8 to 16 and 16 to 32 and so on. And you keep doing that. So you talk about 500 businesses I'm involved in now. Sounds like a huge amount. But it wasn't 3 last year and now it's 500. It was, probably 480 last year and now it's 500. So it's not a big jump, but over 24 years, the machine knows what to do with that at that scale, and then other opportunities present as a result of that. So I'm definitely, I would say my style, and I have to underline that's my style. It's not the right answer. It's my right answer is micro with the compelling economic right to exist. Then, exponential growth after that. Yeah.
Do you think that business owners should strive to scale to big proportions, or do you think that there's like a place for business owners to just have a small business?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts around that, Frank?
I'll give you not my thoughts. I'll give you the theory in entrepreneurship, which is that there's effectively 3 categories of entrepreneurs: survivalists, lifestyleists, and growth entrepreneurs. The survivalists are survive, and they're at that sort of survival income. Lifestyleists are generally families or up to 20 people in the business, and they want the lifestyle. They can make lots of money. And growth entrepreneurs will sleep in their car if they need to in the beginning, and do anything, and they'll keep growing. And at some point, it's not about money. It's about how big. The psychology is, how big is this? Can I get this thing to before I die? So Raymond Ackerman, before he died, wasn't thinking, well, I need another Pick n Pay because, I need the money. It's not about that. It's really about this drive to build something. So growth entrepreneurs really have got an innate desire to build. A lifestyle entrepreneur has got a innate desire for control. Okay, and And a survivalist has got a very bad relationship with growth. Now, if you want to know which one you are, there's a couple of litmus tests that you can do. If you're one of those people who say, if you want to do something properly, you got to do it yourself, you're probably a lifestyle entrepreneur. If you're one of the people who say, my clients only want to see me, okay, you're a lifestyle entrepreneur. If you're one of the people who say, I'm worried that my staff will steal my IP, and so therefore I won't have staff, you're a lifestyle entrepreneur. If you know, and so on and so forth. So you can, whereas growth entrepreneurs work out how to overcome that. They will contract out of those environments. So at one point I was the only salesperson in Raizcorp. Now I've got a team of 15 or so salespeople in Raizcorp. And so, most of my clients have never met, so it can scale. So it was my relationship of letting go that was more important to me because I wanted the growth. And I remember my first mentor when I employed her, she was a coach. As she walked down to meet the entrepreneurs, I was the only person. In the beginning, it was just me. And then as I introduced her in, I was thinking, my ego was saying, I hope they don't like her more than me. But the businessman in me was saying, I hope they like her better than me. And I eventually let go of the ego to make sure that they loved her more than me. And today in the 500 businesses, barring the ones where I put equity in, none of them are mentored by me.
Oh, wow.
Not one. Except through this Flowcode, which is a system. It's like I've digitized my lessons in terms of scaling the business.
Sure. I'm trying to, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of the process of growing as an entrepreneur. And I think, my mind where it's at right now is just, when you're starting, do you think you go through the phases at all? You kind of start as a survivalist and then you kind of graduate to lifestyle. And then,
no, I don't think, because I don't think that. I think that's a neat way to try and justify something in your mind. But I want to change your lens on that. It's not the state you're in. So you could be a growth entrepreneur in survival mode. You could be a growth entrepreneur who's got a 5-person operation. It's your relationship with growth that's important. That's the test for me. It's not how big you actually are. It's what's your relationship with growth. If you want to talk about work-life balance and things like that, to me, it's a lifestyle business. And there's no judgment on it. In fact, weirdly, there's a weird truth to all this. The most effective businesses from a survival perspective are the survivalists. They survive the longest, followed by the lifestyles. The businesses with the highest probability of failure are growth entrepreneurs. Yeah, because they take more risk.
Yeah,
and they keep exposing themselves to more risk. So it's a stupid idea to be a growth entrepreneur. Yeah.
What do you think we need more of in Africa?
A growth entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. 100% a growth entrepreneurs. Our growth entrepreneurs are the ecosystem builders, they're the employers, they're the market makers. They definitely are there. And those, unfortunately, in the African context, are generally dominated by multinationals or the top 3 local companies in each sector, which dominate that space, and they squash out competition. But I think it's harder and harder to do that in a digitized world now. And so there's massive opportunity today in Africa to depose the dominant players in the market.
And for an entrepreneur who's watching this, that hears this holy grail of technology equalizing the playing field, could you explain that a little bit more? How does technology actually equalize that playing field?
So I want to sober the statement first by saying that it's not as if big companies are idiots, okay, and the small guys are clever. Big companies are smart too and employ smart people who are anticipating things. It's their ability to move and shift. So they've definitely got more resource to leverage technology than small business. Okay, so I just want to, I think that's an important sobering remark because there's this David Goliath kind of feel to it. And it's like Goliath's stupid and David's clever. And that's not necessarily the truth. And if you go in with that arrogance that I'm going to take out Goliath, then you're going to completely misread the opportunity. But where I believe, and I said earlier, I'm not a technology guy, but where I believe the opportunity is in market access and technology access. With a lot of technology, everyone talking about AI now, it's available to everyone, corporate and small business. There's so much tech that's available to you that you in 30 years ago, the equivalent level of tech to that period in time would never be in access. It would be too expensive for you. Today it's cheap or free, or there are free versions of that, which you can prove a minimal viable product. One of the businesses I've invested in is a edtech business, and 3 very smart guys who built at the time it was a learning management system, LMS, over a period of a couple of weeks, using like basically patching different other techs and giving it a front. And I think that's the same story to not Uber, to the guys, the bed people on mattress, or the Airbnb. Oh, the Airbnb mattress.
I was literally thinking of trying to deliver a mattress.
No. So it's the story of Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
Where they did that was they basically put an interface and brought other technologies and throw that together, bootstrapped it. So we can do that today, which we couldn't do before. And the other part is market access. You here you are. We're sitting and we're going to get thousands and thousands of people watching this, and
who knows who those people are?
Exactly. Yeah, that wasn't possible. That you had to go and buy an advert on TV, 20 years ago to have that level of access.
I think one thing I've also picked up on that reality that we currently face is how creativity is becoming more and more required to play in that game. Because yes, there's more access, but with more access comes more competition, and it becomes a lot more difficult to make yourself stand out. So touching on that topic of creativity, do you agree with that statement? Do you think that that's something that's coming to the forefront, or?
Yeah, I do. When you were speaking, I was going, no, I agree with you. But part of why I was resisting you is because I think it's consistency more than creativity. It's the other C that's more important. So when I started Flowcode, my business partner is an accountant, and so he's quite negative about everything, right? But he's going, where's the market for this? He's telling me, and I said, Carl, I'll work it out. And like I believe I can do this. And then, but no one, like, who else is doing it? No one. So how's the market? I'll work it out. And on this journey that I've been through over the last couple of years, I have worked it out. I've found markets that I didn't even think of 2 or 3 years ago, that the thing's evolving, but I'm just sticking to it. And I'm believing in the journey that it's taking me on. Like everything, every no is part of my journey, and it's a learning. Every yes is, what am I missing here? Where's the opportunity? So as an example, with Flowcode, it was aimed at small to medium-sized businesses. Now, as I've gone and it's been exposed to corporates, all of a sudden corporates are calling me in and saying, well, tell me about this. And I'm thinking, well, this is not for you. The first one I said, this is actually not designed for you. And I showed them what it is, and they said, we need this more than the small guys. Now, I didn't anticipate that. I didn't go after that. And so then I go, well, was that just a one-hit wonder or like that? What was that? And then the second time it happens, and then you start to learn how to sell in that environment. All of a sudden, you've got a different product for that. You've got an enterprise version of your product. Now, that wasn't part of the plan. That's like years ago. It was not. It was aimed in a certain way, but it was following the path through this thing to it becoming successful.
That's such an interesting take that I've never kind of put those things together in my mind, because a lot of the time we think creativity is spontaneous, like it's the spark of the moment. You got to capture it in a glass bottle and then everything's good, right? Whereas when I always consult our clients, especially in like the content creation space, we're always telling them like, look, we just need to start with something and put that out and see what reaction you get, because it's impossible to predict what's going to work and what doesn't work. And the creative part, I guess, for me is that iterative process, right? You put it out, you see it gets this reaction, okay, it's not quite what we're looking for, let's change it to this. But that iteration process, you know, if you're going to continue doing it indefinitely, at some point you're going to land on an iteration that's going to work. Maybe the creativity part is how many iterations you need to go through in order to get it to work.
That's a consistency part, is to keep fighting through. But let me ask you a question, right? Your business is in the content creation.
I would say, so we own a digital marketing agency and we create digital ecosystems for our clients.
Okay, so that's how you've stated it, right?
Yeah.
Now let's say you do this, and then you meet a guy who's sitting in this seat, right? And afterwards you have a conversation, and they say to you, geez, like, let's take this. I'm connected to this thing in the US, and we're going to take this part of what you're doing into the US. And you work out that opportunity is bigger than this opportunity, that this was the stepping stone to that thing. What do you do? Do you say no to it? Do you say yes to it? How do you deal with that?
I think the best thing to do is to try and do it on a small scale and see if it works, like how you were saying earlier.
So my point is that it's not just about creativity. It is what the opportunity that presents by being there. Right.
Yes.
So it's then doing something deliberately about that and following that. And it could be a dead end. It could be your choices. Maybe it's going to kill you. And your choices, maybe this doesn't resonate with who I am as a human being. The choices, I don't want to do that. Like, there's a lot of choices in how to answer that question. But if it does resonate with you, if it does talk to who you are, then, well, that was the opportunity. This was just the conduit to the opportunity. Okay. And a lot of entrepreneurs are in this space where they confined to this thinking, and they're looking at this thing, they're not looking at the opportunity. And to my point of the corporate opportunity within Flowcode, that wasn't what I was thinking, but I went there, and I was still, it's still a journey, but it might land up that Flowcode has got nothing to do with small businesses into the future. And that's how it just started. But now it's in every large corporate in the world. And, I can tell the story that, we started off with small businesses, and today we're in, the top 500 corporates in the world. That's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm not close to that. I'm still exploring that in my head.
Yeah. And if you're doing things, it gives you the options to choose. Whereas if you're staying stagnant, those options are not going to come your way, or you're not going to run into them because you're not moving. So that movement thing, I can see that's like the important secret sauce, if you want to call it that. If you keep on moving, you will naturally be. Do you feel like you would be kind of Bulelani on the previous episode actually spoke about how, these problems that we face are a vacuum and they're going to be filled in one way or the other. Do you feel like that movement is kind of like you getting pulled into those different vacuums in a way?
Yeah. I love Bulelani. He's one of, I think he's he's a Raizcorp graduate. I like that concept of a vacuum. I like it. I like because it's as I said earlier. There's where there's problem, there's opportunity. Where there's change, there's opportunity. But it's also, there's another. Sometimes opportunities are not obvious. They're obvious to a few. Mm. And I think those are sweeter opportunities. I think to solve the water problem in South Africa today, there's 10,000 people right now thinking about what that's going to be and what they're going to do, and there'll be a massive opportunity there. The great story in the cellular industry was the accessories. That there were companies that have made absolute hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and billions on the accessory side. They weren't trying to solve the best tech and best camera, and they said, well, there's going to be lots of cell phones, and let's accessorize those, with covers and all sorts of things. And I think those are the cleverer people, because somebody creates a market, but there's an ancillary market right by it. And I always look at ancillary markets. And when I speak to my partners, when I invest in businesses, I always say, where's the ancillary market? Where's the opportunity in the ancillary market? If they're big, hairy gorillas in an industry that are dominating, don't go fight them. Don't go fight them. I don't have the pockets to go and like, well, but what's the ancillary market that they're creating? What's another problem that they're creating?
I think that takes a level of like humbling yourself and calming the ego, because a lot of the time those gorillas or those markets are the sexy, cool, thing to do. No one really cares about, okay, you're making a strap for a smartwatch.
Yeah.
Woohoo. Like,
Yeah.
but meanwhile, that guy is making the strap is living life, right? Like, so I think that's an interesting way to look at it for sure. I wanted to ask you, like, I feel like you've achieved a lot of things, a lot of great things. What would you say has been your greatest achievements?
I'm going to be very cliched and cheesy here, but my children.
Sure.
I've got two magnificent young men, boys, and it's. I'd say that's my biggest achievement, because for me, what my biggest thing is that they will take what I've done, and I want them to be way bigger than me. I tell them that, like, this is not about me being the alpha male in the household, and everyone must. I'm saying I'm launching you, and I've got two very well-rounded, mature, smart, high EQ, high IQ boys. So that's my biggest achievement right now. It's not financial. And then to keep a marriage going for 24 years in as an entrepreneur, that's a feat. Any entrepreneur who has been a startup and knows somebody else has to back you when you've got nothing, and you're borrowing money and believing in you. Anyone who's been in a relationship knows how hard that is. And if you've got somebody who doesn't believe in you, or doubts you, it's devastating, not just to your business, but to your marriage as well. So that's another massive achievement, is that I've actually managed to keep a wife and a marriage together over 24 years. And then to me is my partners. I feel very, very, I've got a very, very wonderful relationship with my partners. I absolutely am obsessed about their success. Like, and when they achieve any level of success, like anything, I get very, very excited. So I get a lot of, I appreciate their success. So those are my achievements, my children, my wife, my partners.
As you're talking about your children, I was thinking you can't be too good of a dad because you're not going to have daddy issues.
Exactly. And I actually speak to them about that. Yeah. And it is. I go through that thing. Yeah, I go through that in my, because I'm thinking the big part of their journey is, will they struggle like I did? I mean, my story includes sleeping on the streets, like literally. So I've got that in me. I know I can sleep on the streets and be where there's a self-belief that comes from that. So will they have that? I hope not. So you want to protect them, but I want them to have struggles, their own struggles. And because that will toughen them up and make them better people, better citizens, better everything, better entrepreneurs if they want to be entrepreneurs. And that's another thing is, do I want them to be entrepreneurs? That's their choice.
Not everyone has to do that path. So talking about the future, you've got Raizcorp. You've mentioned a few other ventures that you've invested in. Like you've also mentioned Flowcode. I love the word Flowcode because when you're talking about how you need to kind of just like, you can't get stuck down in the one idea and focus just on that. You kind of have to flow into things and you'll get drawn wherever the vacuum is and the problem that needs to be solved. But what does the future hold for Allon Raiz?
I think the big thing for me, my opus, so to speak, is Flowcode. Flowcode is a methodology to help businesses scale. So I've built a methodology. I've taken my years of experience and built it into a methodology. All my business partners, all the investments are on Flowcode. I've got hundreds and hundreds of clients on it now, and essentially it's me, in the code, because it's software and methodology that helps you build strategy, then extract the to-dos, the objectives, projects, tasks, and targets that come from that strategy, and assign that to people, and then manage the execution of that strategy. So that's why it's flow. It flows from the creation of the strategy right down to who's going to do it, by when. Creation of strategy, not operations, which is different. And so a big part of my teaching from my mentor and what I profess is the Socratic questioning. And Socratic questioning is this ability to ask questions and to open up new vistas of opportunity. So I've taken all where I've mentored and actually put it into software.
Sure.
And so when people say to me, I want to be mentored by you, I say, look, I only take 6 people outside of my partners a year. I'm full, but there is for relatively actually cheap, very, very cheap, is an opportunity for you to be mentored through how I ask questions, and then in software. And so that's getting more and more powerful with AI. So to give you an example of that, and I'm not this guy, so I'm not a techie guy, so I'm going to sound like I know this stuff, but I really don't. But I've been working with somebody in podcasting for nearly 10 years and talking about Flowcode because I built a methodology before I launched. And he's taken all the recordings for 10 years. I've got my own studio where I've been talking for a long time around Flowcode, how it works, the methodology. I've been writing on it, etc. And he's trained AI on it. Then he's taken his face and his voice, and you can now type in the question and he will pop out. He's the genie. He pops out and he answers, and we're experimenting with that. And that's quite weird in a way. It feels a little egotistical in another way, feels a little sci-fi in another way, but so I just pour myself into this. And so my next 30 years are, hopefully I'm around for that, because my intention is that I die at my desk. That's my future, is Flowcode. And there's bigger stuff underneath that, but that's my future.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with it. My wife just said, she thinks I'm having an affair with flow. Like, you're talking about flow.
Who's this flow person you're talking about in your sleep? No, that's awesome. I feel like there's a lot of legacy behind that. And I think it touches to that thing about tech and how it creates an opportunity to scale things very cheaply, which hasn't been something that we've seen in the past. So yeah, I'm excited to see where Flowcode flows to.
Yeah, so am I.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah,
I think this is a really good chat. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I've learned a lot and taken away a lot just from this 1 hour. Can you believe it's already been an hour?
sure. Well, we had fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for watching this latest episode of the C.Cast. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to achieve a huge mission and we need you to invest in it. The best way to do that is by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and leaving a comment down below. By doing that, you help the algorithm understand that we are offering content that is valuable and it will reach more people. There might also be someone out there that just wants to learn a lesson or who might be able to take something away from the podcast. Share it with them. And lastly, if you would like to be more involved in the community, if you want access to opportunities, knowledge from our experience in the digital marketing space, or to connect with other people who are like-minded and uplifting the continent, starting businesses and using tech and creativity to make them successful, join the WhatsApp group by scanning the QR code and we'll chat with you there. Until then, bye.
Where you come from doesn't define you, but understand where the opportunities are in where you come from.
It started off with the mindset of building a 4-bedroom house and then shifted to building a Santa. How does that mindset change happen?
Never withdraw from a relationship that you haven't deposited in.
Bulelani Balabala, CEO of IAF Brands,
You don't find your purpose asking that question, you find it doing stuff.
award-winning entrepreneur, youth ambassador.
I've built it, I've lost it, I've built it.
He has impacted 80,000 plus small businesses.
If they could build that in the middle of nowhere with nothing, and I'm here in the township and I've got community and people, how much more could we build? We could actually build our own Santa.
The founder of Township Entrepreneurs Alliance, aka T.
Even when you enter spaces where you deserve to be, where you've put in the time, you've got an imposter syndrome.
And now, the author of the Township Entrepreneurs Guide to Get Things Done.
So now that changed my whole entire trajectory.
After this conversation, I'm ready to invest.